Okay, hopefully you guys are seeing the video now. Hopefully you guys are seeing the video now, and I can hear myself, so that's good. Okay. Everything is looking good on my end. I wanted to share my screen, but it's not letting me do that while I'm live, so that's kind of annoying. So that kind of creates a problem for me because I wanted to show you guys some stuff, but I guess I'll have to talk about it instead. We'll give everybody a few minutes before we start here, and then we can go from there. And please post your questions in the chat section, and I will answer them when I see them. Okay, John Malaya, I have about 50 plus hairbrushes. This is just some of them. I have, uh, hold on, let me mute myself. Some of them, those are my main ones that I end up using most of the time, but I have hairbrushes all over the place. Um, so here's my little container of airbrushes over here. I have these ones. My main go-to are the Harder Steinbeck and the Badgers. So those are my favorite ones that I prefer. Although I used to complain about the GSI, and now I'm really starting to enjoy it. So this is becoming a real favorite of mine very quickly. Um, the M1 Abrams that I painted. Here's the M1, and this was done with the GSI. So it's actually turning out to be a really nice airbrush. I have to hold it differently, but now it's just working better. Okay, we're almost there. People are saying it's a little choppy. Okay, let me figure out what to do about that. Okay. All right. Hopefully this is a little bit better. Hopefully. Okay, almost time, guys. We'll start here shortly. Still figuring out some issues here. Okay, hopefully this is better. John, no, it is not necessary to have expensive airbrushes at all.
John, no, it is not necessary to have it.
It's yeah. So the reason I have all of these airbrushes is because I worked as an airbrush artist for many years, and that's why I ended up collecting them. So I worked. My first job was airbrushing as a kid for my uncle's company. So I've been airbrushing for many years. So I ended up collecting a bunch of airbrushes, and I've gotten rid of a lot, and then I've kept some and all that stuff. But to be honest with you, if you're a newbie, I think this is a pretty good airbrush, the GSI. You could pick up a Badger really cheap. You could pick up the Badger Renegades and stuff really cheap. Another really good one that gets overlooked is the Posh Raptor. They have it in two versions, the Posh Talon and the Posh Raptor. And either one are really good. And I would say for the this one gives you the best bang for the buck. It gives you the 3 needles, so it comes with the 0.3, 0.5, 0.7 if I remember correctly. And you can get it for less than $100. So it's not a bad starting intro airbrush at all. Some of this stuff, the harder Steinbeck, okay, that is because I did professional work, and I mean they're really great, amazing airbrushes, but you don't need a harder Steinbeck for modeling. To be honest, I just like it. I like a lot of it is personal preference. I just like the way it feels in my hand. That's really the key thing for me. So that's why I have several airbrushes. But some of this, like, I'm gonna get rid of. I don't use this, to be honest with you. I like the Greg's airbrush. I just don't use it enough. I don't like the trigger feel. It's a little loose. I don't like it, so I will get rid of it and I'm gonna sell it. I sold one already to one of my hobby club members. But the point here is, I want to just show you all of the airbrush crap I have, and give you an idea, and then give you a little bit of background. So I was going to share my screen. I can't seem to do that, so I'm not gonna do that, and I'm gonna just talk about my background, and then I'll cover a couple of things. So I got a couple of things down that I will discuss here. Hopefully it gives everybody a good idea. I got some test pieces ready, so let me put all of this stuff back, and then let's get started in a few minutes here. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer while we're getting ready here. So there's my GSI that I've been using recently. I am really starting to enjoy this. First, I didn't like, if you notice, this is why I tell people to always, before you buy an airbrush, always hold it in your hand. Look at where my finger is hitting the cup. This is why I don't like this. So I've had to adjust my finger to be about right here. It gets annoying. And I always tell people that most airbrushes, modern airbrushes today, are pretty much the same. So they all perform the same. You know, you're gonna get they're pretty much all the same, except for the cheap Chinese knockoffs. Do not get those; they will break down. They're not as polished. You're just not gonna get as good of a result. But most modern GSI, Heider Steinbeck, Badger, Pache, all of the Iwata, they all are pretty much the same, and it's really about personal preference. So like this, I didn't like at first because my finger hit the cup. Now that I've adjusted my trigger positioning, I like it a lot more. It's a really solid airbrush. So pick up the airbrush, feel it in your hands before you buy one, just so you have an idea, because that really does matter. It's like buying a car. Cars are pretty much the same, except some people might like some cars and the way they handle versus other cars, etc. Pippin, better have fixed cups or interchangeable cups. Doesn't matter. Fixed cups just provide you with a little bit more flexibility, but they don't necessarily do anything, special. So here's the Harder Steinbeck with the interchangeable cups. I really don't use the big, large cups because I like to go in small sections. And to be honest, I mean, it doesn't seem like it, but with acrylics, this is a pretty large amount of paint. I mean, if you fill this cup up, you're going to basically cover almost, I want to say, a 1/48 aircraft for sure. I mean, that is a lot of paint. Acrylics go a lot. They really give you your bang for your buck kind of a thing. So I don't really find it that useful. It's just how Harder Steinbeck comes. The only issue I can think of with the larger cups is sometimes it's annoying for people. Maybe that may be something you want to think about. You can't move this, so you always have a big, large cup in the way. Okay. All right, 2 minutes out. 2 minutes out. So I got some markers because I'm going to be drawing some stuff to give you guys some of the stuff we were taught when I was starting off as an airbrush artist. Oh, John, you're in the UK. I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if 125 pounds is a lot for you guys. I mean, it's a lot for us because of the exchange rate, but I don't know what the average price is. I would say, honestly, I have a lot of airbrushes, but I'm cheap. I bought them through eBay. That was always a good idea. And honestly, another one that I think people don't look at is Facebook Marketplace. Go on Facebook Marketplace. People are selling their stuff for pennies on the dollar. And I picked up several of my Harder Steinbecks. 3 of them I picked up for $80. So I really recommend checking out Facebook Marketplace. I don't know where in the UK you are, but I'm sure there's people selling their brushes nearby. I also know, and I can't remember the name of the company, but much like Badger, Harder Steinbeck rebadges their airbrushes for a nail salon company, and they are Harder Steinbeck. They just have a different name, and they're much cheaper. I can't remember the name of them, but if you can find out, Google it. You can pick up a Harder Steinbeck, basically rebadged into something else, and it's 10 times cheaper. Robert, how to go to a small line to a thick line? So a couple ways is one, you can expand the nozzle. So pull back on your trigger and your air, and you will get more paint. Or you can change the location of your airbrush from closer to the subject to further away. So you're going to get a broader spray. I'm assuming that's what you mean by thick line. Hey Chris, yes I did. I was testing to make sure the video is working, and I did have some hiccups, so I'm kind of glad I did, but we haven't really started. We've just been chatting, and that's it. So you didn't miss anything, but welcome. Chris, where are you from? By the way, where is everybody from? Because I'm curious to know, because I'm in the US, I'm in Virginia. I don't know about the rest of y'all. Scotland. Awesome. I've never been. I really want to go. Sweden, northeast of England, Norfolk. Okay. Northern Colorado. Hey, I'm gonna be in Colorado, Mark. I'm with the FAA. We go out there, and last time I was out there, we ended up going up the side of a mountain to fix a radar. That was interesting. I've never been up to 13,000 feet and had to take oxygen bottles and everything. That was kind of new for me, coming from California. Robert, California. Nice. I'm from Sacramento originally. Charleston, sweet. Taz, where's Rotterdam? I don't think I know where that is. A lot of English people. Love England. I'm going back in probably October to London. Yeah, you are correct, Pippin, Virginia. I mean, today, right now, we are, oh my God. So right now in Virginia, this entire week was ridiculous. The temperature was absolutely ridiculous. And right now it's 79 degrees and the humidity is actually pretty, it's at the humidity is at 73%. It's insane. I mean, Virginia used to be a swamp, so you got to remember that. Iceland, awesome. Okay, guys. Let's get started. And if you have any questions, ask them in the chat, and I will try to get to them. I was going to try to share my screen, and it's not letting me do that with the live broadcast. But I wanted to share a couple of things. And if anybody knows how to do that, that would be, you can let me know. That would be great. Yeah, I'm looking at the options on the side. It's not letting me do it. So, okay. Let me start off with my background in airbrushing first. So I started airbrushing around age 9. My uncle owned a print shop. And this was back in the 90s. So do you remember those posters that kids used to have on their wall of like Lamborghinis? They were, I think, like 3 feet by 2 feet kind of a thing. And they were Lamborghinis or beer posters or all sorts of stuff. That his company used to print those in California. Now, like any good businessman back in the day, the printing process wasn't great, so there would be a lot of errors. Now, I don't know the cost of all that stuff. I was a kid, but he would hire airbrush artists to fix the prints that could be fixed, and that's where I ended up getting a job. I'm Asian. My family doesn't believe in child labor laws, so I was told, hey, go find a job. You're going to go work for your uncle. So that's what I did. We ended up getting trained by a lady that he hired who was an artist. And I am not an artist, so I want to make that clear. But we got trained by her, and she explained to us how there's ways to trick the eye to make things look nice when you have an error and all that stuff. And then I worked for him a couple summers, and then from there I worked for a couple of magazines doing corrections here and there, etc. And then worked painting cars, blah blah blah, did all that kind of stuff. Been modeling since I was 7 years old. When I first came to the US, my teacher introduced me to modeling, and I loved it. And it was many years down the road that I put 2 and 2 together, that you can airbrush models. Because of I've been working with paints all my life, my sense of smell is completely ruined. I basically have, my doctors have told me that they only see this kind of sense of smell in somebody who's been a heavy smoker for like 40 years of their life. So it really ruined my sense of smell. I used to use lacquers mostly. That was common, and that's the common paint in a lot of the car industry, etc., things like that. So I can't stand lacquers anymore. I will get nosebleeds shortly. Doesn't matter if I'm wearing a mask or not. Even though you're wearing a mask, when you're around it, there's still a little bit left over, and that's what people don't understand. Go watch people who have done house painting and look at their masks, the inside of their mask. It reduces a lot, but it doesn't reduce everything. I can still taste, yeah. I haven't completely lost my sense of smell, John, but I've lost most of it. So, lost most of it. Ended up having to switch to acrylics about 10 years ago, I want to say. And I hated them. Cannot get them to airbrush. They would have just problems. Tip drying was the major issue. And lacquers, you don't get that. That's one thing good about lacquers. They're usually right out of the bottle. They're ready to go for the most part. Acrylics are not. Always had a problem with acrylics. So, got rid of my acrylics. I think I bought $300 worth, sold them for $100. So, great businessman right there. Then I ended up going, trying Hataka lacquers, which were not as smelly, which I actually do like. But after a while, I still would get nosebleed. So I got rid of those. Although if you're looking for a less smelly lacquer paint, my recommendation would be the Hataka lacquers. They do need to be thinned. My other big problem with Hataka lacquers is they're so hard to get a hold of. It's a pain in the ass. I know they're a Polish company, but it's just so hard to get a hold of them in the U.S. So that's one of the other negatives I have about them. But anyway, continuing. Work with my artist friends who are the artist community, and I mean the professional artist community. I don't mean modelers. They all use acrylics, and I never understood why they prefer acrylics. Well, they prefer acrylics because you can do 10 times more stuff with acrylics than you can with lacquers. And that's the real thing. You can tint acrylics, you can thin them, you can make them translucent, you can make them into a paste, you can make them into a powder, you can do so many things with acrylics. As I said, I'm not an artist, so I'm not using the correct terminology, but they add additives, for a lack of a better word, into acrylics to make them function. And that is what my thinner formula is. It's basically an additive based on what they told me. And this thing is a combination of three things that becomes a polyurethane additive, whatever. Not a chemist, but I work with my artist friends to come up with this. There's one you can buy off the market, by the way, but it's not made for airbrushing. It's a little bit thicker, and people use that as well. So this turns the paint a little bit more stronger, it helps it flow better, etc. And that's what the goal I had in mind when I was trying to come up with this, because I really do want to continue modeling. I just can't do it with lacquers and enamels because of my health issue and getting nosebleeds. It just was not doable for me. So, having said all of that, hopefully you've seen from my videos that you can use acrylics if you understand them. You cannot use them the same way you do lacquers. And that was one of the big things I had to learn. You have to learn how to airbrush acrylics. You don't go into airbrushing acrylics the same way you do lacquers. Lacquers, enamels, if you remember Model Master, I mean, look for those who still use Model Master. Model Master enamels were pretty great. They were pretty much idiot proof. You just put them in and you airbrush them at, you could airbrush them at 30 psi and you'd be fine. There was no issue, nothing. Acrylics are a little bit more temperamental, so you have to play with them in a different way. Okay, having said all that, so a couple things I want to cover. First thing is I want to talk about the airbrush because oh, John, you had a couple questions. I use I'm Omega and I always have to thin them. Yes, you will always have to thin acrylics or most paints for the most part, because the thing is, a lot of these paints that are airbrushable ready, quote unquote, are tested in a particular set of circumstances in a lab, and unless you have those exact set of circumstances in your modeling room, you're not going to get the same result. So you have to thin them. And adjust the psi accordingly. So as I mentioned earlier, when we were online talking, I'm in Virginia right now. It is 80 degrees with 73% humidity. You're gonna have to thin your acrylic. Should I strain them as well? No, I don't really bother. I think it's a good idea. I just don't do it. To me, the impurities that I've experienced in acrylic paint is so little that it's not worth my time to it. I think it adds an unnecessary step. I think I probably maybe in 1 year have had that an issue once with not straining a paint. That's about it. So I think it is a good thing you should do. Okay, let's talk about airbrushes because there's a couple of things I think I want to explain about airbrushes in particular that I don't think people really know. So I'm going to use the Pache for this example. This is the Raptor. By the way, just to give you an idea, you can. This is their Raptor from their garage sale. It has a couple of blemishes, and I got this for $40. So you can pick up airbrushes really cheap on sale at a lot of these airbrush companies, especially if they have blemishes and stuff. But it works fine. Works absolutely fine. Okay, I'm not going to go into double action versus single action. You can watch a lot of videos about that. But I am going to talk about a couple things you should know about your airbrush. People don't understand there's a couple of features of your airbrush that you should be aware of. So a lot of airbrushes now have cutaways. And the reason you have cutaways is the needle chuck here, you can push it back and try to blow out air. So it's a quick way for you to blow out air if there's something stuck or if you just need to get blow out air, whatever it may be. When you unscrew the back, by the way, I have a trigger stop, and I really don't recommend using the trigger stop unless, of course, you're not comfortable with your airbrush skills, because you'll start getting a feel for the airbrush and you'll never have to use your trigger stop. I have never used my trigger stop ever, because once you have a feel for your airbrush, you just don't need it. But the body right here, this component, it screws out, and you know that, and I think a lot of people know that, and that's how you remove it, and you can remove, you know, the body and the needle to clean up. But do you understand this portion right here is also used to adjust your trigger tension? So if you want to tighten your trigger feel, screw it in more. Notice it's more tight right now. But if I want a softer trigger feel, unscrew it, and now it's a more soft trigger feel. So these are a couple things that I want you to know about your airbrush. Some airbrushes don't have that. The HNS, they don't have that. They don't allow that kind of function to happen. So you should be aware if your airbrush has that or not, because that can give you, you know, you can adjust to your preference. You can't do this with the Evolution. You can't do this with the Infinity because they don't allow that. This is just this one piece screw in. It does not allow you to adjust your trigger at all. So keep that in mind. Same with who else? The GSI, I believe also. I don't know. I don't remember. No, the GSI allows you to trigger adjust your trigger tension. I have forgotten about the GSI. Okay. Another thing is, if you really want to do fine detail painting, most airbrushes allow you to take out your protective cap. Now you can get closer in with, just be careful because your needle is sticking out, but you can get closer in and do fine detail painting this way. So 2 things to note about the airbrush. Couple of recommendations that I have, just makes life easier. You'll notice I have a quick disconnect on all my airbrushes. This way I can plug them in very quickly. So here's my hose, quick disconnect, put another airbrush if I want. Simple, easy. I really recommend getting a quick disconnect. Just makes it easier. Even if you have 2 airbrushes, really, if I don't do this, then I have to screw this on, the hose on, and then screw off the hose every time I want to attach another airbrush. So quick disconnect is a worthwhile investment. Another investment that I have that I really recommend is this thing. This it looks like nothing. This is a backflow little thing from Harder Steinbeck. If you've seen my videos, I mix paint inside my airbrush by backflowing, and there's no problem with it. Acrylics are not going to screw up your airbrush, so I don't know why people worry about that. And to be honest, back in the day, so let me see if, oh, this thing is stuck on here. Let me try to find one. Which one has it? Which one has it? Oh, okay. So, when you... Dang it. Let me try to get my... Oh, by the way, another investment is rubber pliers, because you will always need to unscrew stuff, and you don't want to use metal because it will ruin your airbrush. So this is a good way to remove your nozzle or whatever when it's stuck. So if you'll notice, there's a rubber seal around here, and back in the day these things would break often. Nowadays they're made much better, and you can use backflush lacquer paints and they're not going to destroy your rubber seals. They used to. We used to go through a lot of seals back in the day, but I've never had to worry about that now. And I remember when I first got my Harder Steinbeck many years ago, their seals had a defect and they would replace them for free because of that. But nowadays, no, you don't need to worry about that. Okay. So, backflush tool works really nicely pretty much on every airbrush I have. It covers the nozzle, and the reason I recommend getting this is because people cover it with their hands sometimes, or they try to use a Q-tip, and you're going to damage your your needle at some point doing that. So don't do that with your hands or with Q-tips or cotton buds, whatever you want to call them, because you're going to damage your needle. The tip of your needle is very fragile for the most part, so be very careful. This works perfectly. It covers pretty much every airbrush. I've tried it on the GSI, on the Pache, on the Badgers. It works great, and it cost me I think it was $1.50. Okay, let me just check the questions before I proceed here. John, okay, let's see. John, should I strain them as well? Good to hear. Every leak, quick release I brought has leaks. Okay, yeah, you're gonna get leaks, and in particular with some airbrushes, I find that's more common than others. So with the Pache, this quick disconnect, I have 3 Paches. I can't find all 3, but all 3 of them, there was a leak. All 3 of them. It didn't matter. So what you have to do is, I believe it's called, I don't remember the exact term, washer tape. It's very thin, and you wrap it around your thread and then screw it on, and then you will not have any leaks. But I've only had this happen with my Pache. No other airbrush I have had this issue, but with the Pache, all 3 of them, there was an issue. So hopefully that helps, John. Okay, so wanted to cover some basic stuff that you should know about your airbrush, just to give you an idea. And I'll stop for a minute right here if anybody has any questions, because I did go through a couple of things here. You can use, no, not on your O-rings. Not on your O-rings. Do not use beeswax on your O-rings, because you need to eventually get rid of your O-rings once in a while. They will. They may break, or they may, get damaged, whatever. You do not want to use beeswax on O-rings. Plumber's tape in the U.S. Cool. Yeah. All right. Plumber's thread tape. My 2 Badgers, Soda 2020 and a 105 Extreme, that have exposed needles. Yeah. Hey, Chris. So that's funny that you mentioned that, because I found my Badger 105 original nozzle here. And then they make one that covers the needle, and this one actually performs better. So you can get a one that doesn't expose the needle. This one exposes the needle, as you can see from here. This is the one that originally comes in. And then as far as the Sotar, because I do have a Sotar, I have 3 Sotars is here. So if you notice my Sotar here, you can get the pronged ones. Do you see? Hopefully you can see the prongs, Chris. And you can get that to cover your needle. However, you want to keep the tip that exposes your needle for fine detail work. So don't throw it away. But you can get these covered ones. Now I will say something here. This is just my personal opinion. So take this for what it is. But I'm finding some of Badger's quality recently lacking. So I will just throw that out here. I don't know if you can see it, but on this, nozzle covering with the prongs here, they kind of bent inward. There was a little cliff that they formed there. I don't know how this camera isn't great here, but what happens is eventually while I'm spraying, paint starts to build up. Yet the other one, notice this one has been tapered almost, and it doesn't do that. So this one is much nicer. So I don't know if it's they just changed the design or what the hell happened, but I got this with the airbrush. I don't like it. I recommend this one right here, where if you're using a Badger, and a lot of the Badger parts are interchangeable, by the way, so that's one good thing about Badger. Use this one that doesn't have that little ridge, because the paint will start to build up here, and what will happen is at one point you're gonna start airbrushing, and the build-up paint is gonna just spit out blobs onto your paintwork, and it's gonna ruin your paintwork. So do not use this one with the prongs with the little cliff at the end of them. Use this one that's been like tapered off, and it's really nice and smooth. Hope that helps. Oh yeah. Go on their webpage. They have a direct webpage now, Chris. Not their main webpage. It's called US Airbrush Supply. That's where they sell all of their stuff from now. So if you go on there, you can find the stuff, and you can buy the prong there. It's really not expensive. I think I got mine for $5. And the same with the 105. They have this prong with for the 105. The tip with the prongs here for the 105, and it was only like $5. So it was really cheap. So worth it in my opinion, because you are, especially with the 105, you are at some point going to damage that needle. I've had it where my brush fell off my holder and hit the ground, and the needle damaged. There's always going to be something that happens. The needle is going to get damaged. So I would not risk it. That's just my opinion, but yeah. Okay, so if we're good with those, any other questions, guys, before I move on? Because I'm going to move on now and talk about priming as my next topic here. Been there, done that. Yeah, I've replaced a couple of needles myself there because of my stupidity and dropping the airbrusher. So. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so let's talk about priming. Okay, so I use acrylic primers. I still have my lacquer primers. I think lacquer primers are awesome. I am not knocking lacquer primers. If you end up using a lacquer primer, so I still have my old stock of, I have my Mr. White, which is, lacquer primer, and just thin it heavily, and it works great, and they're sandable. So there are two main acrylic primers I think we're all aware of, and the first one is the Vallejo primers, and they're not my favorite primers, but they can be made to work. They're not the easiest primers, but they can be made to work. Okay, I've done a video of this already on my channel. There's a couple of ways to make this work. The biggest problem with the Vallejo surface primer is that it needs 24 hours to 48 hours to cure. It may look dry at the surface, but it's not. And until it's cured, if you try to sand it, it will gum up. If you try to mask over it, it will peel off. It's not going to work until you've given it enough time to dry. So that's the big problem with one of the big problems with Vallejo primers. So this is where people started hating them, and I get it. I am not claiming they're the best primers in the world. I'm not. So yeah, do with that what you will. Now the way to make them work, which I've discussed in my videos, is one, you can add in future, or clear as it's called for my friends in the UK and Europe. Adding in 30% clear to your Vallejo primer makes them strong and sandable within an hour. So what will happen is it will also make them airbrush better. what happens is you add in 30% of Future, you add in 70% of Vallejo primer, airbrush at a 20 psi. It's going to make them airbrush better, so they don't clog as much, they don't tip dry as much, and then in an hour they're strong and they're ready to go. And then you can sand them, and they won't gum up on themselves. You can mask over it, and it won't peel. That was one of the solutions. Now, the problem is Future has become more expensive than gold these days, so you know that's not doable anymore. So my thinner mixture formula, which is in my channel, also works the same way. You add in about 30 to 40% of the thinner mixture to your Vallejo primer, airbrush at 20 psi, give it a good solid hour, and same thing. It is then more resilient, and you are able to sand it, and you are able to mask over it, etc. It'll be fine after that. But you need to give it that hour, and you need to use the thinner mixture, or wait. I would say, they say 24 hours. I say 48 hours. And some modelers are good with that. I am not. I don't have that kind of patience. I like to airbrush and get everything done in like an hour, so I don't like to wait. So this is what I would recommend. John, the thinner mixture is on my channel, but it's basically the easiest way to explain it is 70 parts flow improver, 30 parts or 3 parts thinner, and 1 part retarder. What I would say is I use Vallejo flow improver, thinner, and retarder because it's easy to get for me. But you can use any flow improver, retarder, thinner. Just make sure it's the same company. I've tried to mix and match, and it hasn't come out well when I do that. So just be aware of that. And on my ammo video, by the way, that's what I use to thin my ammo paints, and they perform amazingly well. So the thinner mixture works on any water-based paint, any water-based acrylic, but it has to be water-based. I know that's not the technical correct term, but it's the most common use term. So if you have ammo, AK 3rd Gen, Mission models, Vallejo, whatever, as long as it's their water-based acrylic line, it works on all of them. I've tested it pretty much on everything. And Chris was nice enough to send me some stuff, and I've been testing on those paints. So I did test it on Mission models, and some point when I get a full set, I'm gonna do a video on airbrushing Mission models. The AK 3rd Gen, I bought a set, and I'll be showing how to airbrush with the thinner mixture there. So it works on all water-based acrylics. There's the story. Okay, moving on. Now, as far as acrylic primers go, oops, sorry. This is my favorite. Ignore the bottle. It's not Vallejo. This is, yes, Chris, Future has been discontinued, and it's replaced by Quickshine. Quickshine is not as good. The one good thing about Quickshine is if you're looking for a cheap gloss to airbrush over your model for weathering, it actually is pretty good for that. It is not as good for dipping canopies, which is what I usually use Future for, and you can't mix it in with the primers. But you can mix it into your paint if you want a little bit of a shine to your paint, and we can talk about why sometimes you might you don't want a dead flat to your paint. But getting back to this, oops. This is my Badger. My bottle had a leak in it, so I put it into an old Vallejo bottle, but this is actually Badger primer. This is my favorite primer. This stuff is awesome. This is just super, super, super awesome. It is my favorite primer. It works great. It does have an issue, which is you will get tip dry at some point. Acrylics, you're always going to get tip dry unless, of course, you add in something to help prevent the tip dry. So with this, I will add in about 40% thinner mixture, and then I will airbrush this at about 20-25 psi, and you get a nice finish. And this is what I recommend personally, Badger primer as the top primer. Again, ignore the bottle because the bottle broke. I used an old Vallejo bottle, but this is Badger primer. So I highly recommend Badger primer. Okay. A couple things to note about primers. So for this video, I did this. Primers are important because the tone of the paint changes based on your primer. I literally did this 20 minutes before the start of the video. I used red, Vallejo red, airbrushed it over 3 different primers, and you can see how different the paint looks on each primer. So the color of the primer you use will impact your paint. Okay? So keep that in mind. So if you're looking for if you use a black primer, so notice this has got a very dark tone. It's almost like a brown to a certain degree, and it's going to change the color. SJ, what is your opinion on rattle can primers? They're good. I used to use Tamiya primers in the rattle can. They're really top notch. And Mr. Surfacer 1500 in the rattle can is good too. But here's one thing negative about rattle can primers: you're wasting your money. I mean, they're not long lasting. You go through rattle cans a lot faster. That's just the reality of it. So I'm cheap, SJ. That's just me. But I don't buy rattle cans anymore. I used to buy them when I was younger, but I would rather just buy a bottle of Badger and just airbrush it myself, and put back in what I don't use, or only put in the amount that I need. But the rattle cans work really nicely. Chris, I saw that Ammo's one-shot primer is Badger Stynylrez. Yes, Badger Stynylrez is sold under different names, so keep that in mind. Badger Stynylrez is sold under Ammo one-shot, and it's also sold under a British company, Ultimate Modeling, with Paul. I can't remember his last name, but he's a really top-notch car modeler guy. Pippin, I've heard that AZ Gauzy. Yes, it's a great. First of all, I love AK Gauzy Agent. I know we're getting off the tangent. I love it. I love this stuff. Genuinely love this stuff. This is my gloss coat for weathering. Nothing comes close. I actually think this is better than Future. It's not as glossy, but it's better than Future. It works on metallic paints. It's the only thing I've seen that doesn't change the sheen of the metallic paints. It works on acrylics. It works on enamels. You can put oils on top of it. Once 30 minutes, you can put oils on it. You can put enamels on it. You can put clay wash on it. It is like bulletproof. The only thing you cannot put on it is acrylic washes. Acrylics are really devastating for some reason to a lot of glosses. It's something in the acrylics that just wounds the gloss. But I love AK Gauzy Agent. The only thing you can't do is you can't use it to dip canopies. It's not good for that. You have to use another product that AK makes. Okay, so going back to primers here, notice the tone of the paint changes. So depending on what you're looking for, this is really important. So black, notice it's going to be more darker, it's going to be shadowier, and keep that in mind when you're doing airbrushing. White is the one that's going to make the paint shine a little bit more. This is why typically you want to use white or pink for like a hard color like yellow. And then gray is the more neutral one. Okay, so keep that in mind. Gray is more neutral. But so just give you an idea of primers. Now, I always recommend primers. I completely 100% recommend primers. And here's a couple reasons why. Oh, by the way, you see this foam? Invest in something like this for your model. It's you can get for free somewhere. I picked this up. I didn't even buy this. But you need this for your model to rest on it. And here's why. This is paper under here, this blue thing. Paper is very abrasive. It actually will leave little scratches and reveal and cut back on the primer or the paint. And so it's good to have it on something soft like this that doesn't harm the primer or the paint. And I've put, and I don't care what kind of primer it is. It doesn't matter. It can be lacquer and it'll still nick it away. Paper is very abrasive, so you never put your models on paper when you're painting. And I've seen modelers do that, but like where it's touching, normally like around here, you're gonna see like little nicks, and you'll see the primer damage right there. So always try to put it on a soft pad like this. And I use this to paint as well, just to hold it. So, a couple things about primers. Primers, you need primers for a couple things. One is they make the surface uniform. So this kit, for example, I used red glue, ammo red glue, to glue everything together. And then the canopy was a dark gray, obviously, so I sprayed the outside of the canopy. I masked it, sprayed it, then I put the thing on. It's gonna make everything uniform. If I hadn't done that, the color would bleed through a little bit or change the tone, depending. And you don't want that. You want it to be uniform, so primers help make everything uniform. Second thing primers do is they help the paint adhere to something. Now, you can, and this is something that I want to tell people because they don't believe me on this, but you can airbrush acrylics without a primer. If you're not planning to handle the model a lot, you can do that. But if you're like me and clumsy and you accidentally bump into things all the time, a primer is really important and helps the paint stay on. But for example, here is Vallejo's book. Kind of sneak in here, and you can see how they demonstrate you can just airbrush right on top of the model. And there are some modelers I know who do that. So you can airbrush on bare plastic. You don't need a primer with acrylics. That is a misnomer that people have said, oh, you have to have a primer with acrylics. You don't. You just got to be a little bit more careful. The third most important thing that primers do is they help you find flaws. And this is a perfect example. I've been posting updates about this kit on the group, and it looked great. And then, I don't know if you can see this. Hopefully you can see this. You see the ghost seam right there? Right there? Right there. This is what primers do. This is why primers are so important and so necessary, because your eye is not going to pick that up without a primer. And I actually thought everything looked great before I put on the primer. I was like, oh, okay, I glued this. I ran putty over this. I sanded this all the way down to 4,000 grit, and everything looked perfect. I put it against the light. There was no dip, nothing. And then as soon as you put on a primer, there's the ghost seam right there. Right there. There, it's not smooth right there, so I have to go back in and fix it. Thankfully, the rest of the area it's fine. A little bit of scratches here and there, which just have to smooth out with like a 2000 grit sandpaper. So it's really important that you use primers. I can't stress that enough. And personally, I always prime every model I do. Okay, I'm gonna put this back. We're gonna airbrush this a little bit later in the demo. All right, guys, any questions before we move on here? Do you use water with the sandpaper? Yes. Not a lot of water, but a little bit of water. It's going to make the sandpaper... it's going to help your sandpaper last longer, and wet sanding actually produces a nicer finish, in my opinion. But yes, I recommend wet sanding. Just a little bit, that's all you need. You don't need tons of it. It just works better. It doesn't, if you don't wet sand, you'll find a lot of times it'll be dusty and gunky. It'll become gunky and dusty, so try to wet sand if you can. That is my recommendation. I do that on my models. I'm going to grab something really quickly, but I'll be right back here. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, back now. So, that's what I wanted to say about primers. And now we're going to actually airbrush a primer, and how I go about airbrushing my primers. Okay, there was a question about in the group a while back about what kind of compressor I used. I want to explain my modeling situation. One of the other reasons I use acrylics, not just for my health, but because I live in a small environment. And I share this space with roommates. So I'm going to show you my modeling. So hopefully you guys can see. So there's my spray booth. There's my window. There's my paint. There's more paint, supplies, all of that stuff. And where the hell is my cat? Maybe I can show you my cat. They're always around. But there's one of the reasons I have to use, because I live in a small environment and I airbrush in my room. So I have to be more aware and responsible when I airbrush. Oops. So, because of this, I also have a compressor. Oh, I didn't show you guys the compressor. There's my compressor. Oh, by the way, these are all test pieces because I do a lot of testing. There's my compressor. I got this compressor because it is super, super quiet. It is so quiet that I forget that it's on sometimes. There are tank compressors like the Posh one and Badger. They're not as quiet, and they get a little annoying when you're brushing for a long time. This thing, I don't hear it. And when you're living in a small space, sound really starts matters because this hobby is also loud. I don't know if you realize that. We're gonna have this going. I'm not gonna have the spray booth going right now because you won't be able to hear me. But I have the spray booth going when I'm airbrushing. By the way, you should use a spray booth, fan, and a mask, preferably, all three. But if not, at the very least, you should have a fan and a mask if you don't have an spray booth. But anyway, going on to the airbrushing part right here. So I'm going to turn on my compressor. And I am going to airbrush this piece with the Badger primer. Now, I use, for airbrushing purposes, I really use my Badger 105. You have to have a clean surface before priming with acrylics. I brush need IPA. My primer of choice is Sunrise. That is the smart thing to do, Ginger. And gonna be honest, I don't know. I always do that. You should absolutely do that. I recommend that when you're this goes back to a conversation that's been happening in a lot of groups, and that is, do you airbrush or do you wash your model before or not? And I do not wash my models, but I wash my models when I'm ready to paint them, because by that time I've touched them and my oils for my hands are on them and stuff. So by that time they usually do require a wash. Or you may have, some issues with the priming or anything like that. This one I haven't washed because this one I just took out of a bath of cleaner, because this is my test mule. This is what I use to test on, so it's constantly technically being washed. But you should always wash the surface of the model, or clean the surface of the model with IPA or whatever, or soapy water, whatever it may be, because by the time you're ready to paint your model, yeah, you probably have a lot of just oil from your hands on the model by that point. So follow Ginger's advice on this. You should. I don't typically, because most of the time in between I'm really cleaning it anyway, so I don't necessarily find the need for it. But if I wasn't doing that, I would definitely be washing or soaking the model down or rubbing it down with IPA or whatever it may be. Okay, so before you get ready to airbrush, first thing, test it. Do you hear air going out? Is there any issue with the trigger? Okay, so that's the minimum. Because the worst thing is you get ready to airbrush and there's something wrong with the airbrush. Okay? Second thing I'm going to do. Again, this is a Vallejo bottle. Ignore it. It's not Vallejo inside. It's a thinner cleaner that I have, and I'll tell you about this a little bit later. But I'm going to do this. I'm going to run a little bit of this just to make sure there's nothing. And you should have one of these little pots, airbrush cleaner pots. They really are important with the filters. This really takes care of a lot of smells, to be honest. Okay. Okay, cool. Everything is blowing nicely. There's no issues. All right, now I know I'm ready to go and I can start doing my thing. What I like to do is, where did I put my stuff? Now I can't find my stuff. Oh, there it is. First, I like to put it in my thinner mixture first, because this helps lube the needle as well. And I recommend about 40% thinner mixture to about 60% primer. Now, I'm going by feel. I've gotten to the point where I go by feel. So, you know, that's how I am. But if you have these kind of bottles, you can count the drops and get to that number and count it out if you're a little bit more analytical, or you know, somebody who needs a little bit of, like, I need to know exactly. I'm going by feel because I'm just used to it. Another little tool. These are stirring sticks that I bought from Tamiya. Worth it, because you always have to agitate the paint or the primer first just to get it going. And these things are really, really good at doing that. Oh, sorry. One other thing. Let's back up for a second. Any acrylic, primer, paint, it doesn't matter. It needs to be thoroughly, thoroughly, thoroughly mixed. Now, I knew I was going to do this demo, so some of my stuff has already been mixed, and it's not an issue. But if I was just here by myself and starting to do this, I always use this, a vortex mixer. This thing mixes paint like nobody's business. It is my favorite thing. I love it. Nothing mixes paint as well as this. I got this, I think, for $20 from Amazon. It's been one of my best investments. I've had it for like 5 years. I really recommend grabbing one for mixing paint, especially acrylic paint. It's a lifesaver. So I really, really recommend getting a vortex mixer. I know Badger has their own mixture, but it doesn't work because these bottles are too thin for the mixer. You have to either really cut the mixer blades and get that, but it's not worth it. So just get this vortex mixer instead. And I know they have a shaker one, which I don't think is as good. This thing really is much, much better. Okay, getting back to it. So my PSI is at 20. I've mixed it thinner to paint at 60-40. Or I'm sorry, paint to thinner at 60-40. And I'm going to press down and I'm going to press back a little bit. And you notice how these bubbles come up? That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for these bubbles because what that tells me is it's mixed enough that the airbrush is going to be able to airbrush it out. And this is what we did when we used to paint when I worked for my uncle, because when you're painting for 8 hours a day, you're not going to sit there and mix into a cup and then do this over and over again, because we got paid by the painting. So time literally was money for us, and we're going to, you know, we want to go quickly. We just mixed everything in the cup. Now I know some people are not comfortable doing that, and if you're not comfortable doing that, mix it in a cup and then put it into your airbrush. But I'm just to the point where I'm comfortable doing that, and I'm going to go ahead and do it. Now, you should always test on a white sheet of paper. So you're always going to start off, everything is flowing well. Okay, now I can go. So always have a white sheet of paper to test it on. I'm going to go in. Notice it's airbrushing smoothly. I'm not blasting it on because it's really thin. The first layer here is just to cut the surface tension, and then I'll come back in and I will cover more. You're going to have a wet, shiny look to this, but it will tone down. Keep that in mind. So, right now it's super wet. You don't want to be touching the primer when it's super wet. I'm going to touch it just to kind of show you here. Okay? So you don't want to be doing that. That's not what you want to do when the paint is super wet. You need to give it, you can use just the air to help dry it, but give it about 15 minutes when you're done priming. And I'm going to try to blend this in. By the way, you will have to sand that out a little bit because it's... You want to hit from all angles, by the way, so you make sure you got everything. So, like right there, didn't get that, but that's it. That's how easy priming is. Just want to give this time to dry, and then I can finish up the rest or whatever it may be. In about 5 minutes, it's going to pull back, and it's already starting to do that, like over here in some areas, and you can see that. But it's just going to take a little bit. You got to give it a few minutes. Cool. There we go. Any question on priming? I know that was a quick demonstration, but honestly, it's really that quick. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so we'll move on. So once you're done priming, obviously, it's time to clean. And here's how I clean my airbrush. I have a little dedicated container thing. Any remaining one, I'm just going to dump out here. Okay. I'm going to blow out as much of the remaining leftover paint as possible. You want to get as much of it out as possible, right? Okay, there's a little bit dripping here, so I'm just going to wipe that away. Here's what I use to clean up all my acrylics. This stuff, this yellow stuff. Hold on just a second. I actually have a bottle of it, and I want to show you exactly what it is, because this stuff is amazing, and it's cheap. Okay, can everybody see that? This Lysol all-purpose cleaner. I got this for $3.95 at my local Walmart. And this stuff kills acrylic paint like nothing I've seen. I used to use something called Simple Green. And Simple Green is this natural cleaner. However, recently it's there's been supply issues, so it's been hard to get a hold of. So as a result, I've switched over to this, and it is way better. And it has a lubricating agent of some kind in it. I don't know exactly what it is, but it really works way better. So if you're in the US, you can pick this up at your local Walmart really cheap. I'm not sure about the UK and Scotland, guys, and maybe even Iceland. I'm not sure if it's available there, but I will say I've seen the ingredients are similar to something called Dettol, and I don't know what that is exactly, but I've heard my UK friends say it's similar to Dettol. So Dettol is like the equivalent. Yeah? Does that make sense to the UK viewers and such? Dettol? Chris, needle size. I'm assuming you're asking for my Badger needle size for the 105? It's 0.5. I recommend this is actually a good question. I'm sorry I didn't cover this. Okay. For primers, you want a bigger needle size. And there's a whole reason why, and I'm not going to go into it because it's a really complicated thing, but there's an amazing modeler named Paul Budzik, and his channel, he will talk about why you want to it's better to airbrush primer using a large needle, and it's because of how airbrush sprays work. And yeah, he's great. Watch his video, but basically you want to use a large needle size for airbrushing primers. This is the biggest needle size I have. I would actually use a 0.7 if I had it, but 0.5 is the biggest one I have, and you want to use a bigger one, especially for acrylic primers. So that's what I'm using for this. Okay, so going back, this is how I clean it. One, I'm going to fill it up. I have a dedicated brush somewhere. I can't find it. I have a dedicated brush that I use just for this because it's worn out and such. I'm going to wipe away as much of this stuff as I can. I don't want to be airbrushing crap through my nozzle. I want to try to get as much of it as possible out. So wiping away, dumping out. Then I'm going to blow in here. Oh, by the way, the reason you're seeing bubbles here is there is a rubber seal that goes around the 105, and I never got one when I bought it from this guy, and so that's why you're gonna see when I spray some things, especially when it's backflow, the air is gonna come back through and there's gonna be bubbles. It doesn't do anything to the airbrush. It doesn't ruin it anyway. So just do not. So ignore that. It doesn't really matter. But that if you see that, don't freak out. So again, gonna do it again. Gonna make sure I try to get everything in the cup washed out. Get it? All right. Blow whatever's remaining in the nozzle right there. Okay. After I've done this about twice, usually the cup is clean. Now I'm going to clean out the nozzle area, and I'm going to add in, and then I'm going to find my little nozzle tool, and I'm going to back flush. Blow out. Do it again. Notice I'm not using a lot here for the back flushing. You don't really need a lot. This time I'm going to blow everything out this way. I want to make sure if there's any paint, it gets blown out. Do it again. And I'm going to leave a little bit in, and I'm just going to test it on my paper here. Nope. Everything is coming out clear. Okay, cool. Chris, Paul Buzzik's YouTube channel is outstanding. Yes, he is a very technical guy, and I respect that I am not. So I love his videos and how he explains everything. He does a great job. So mad respect to his channel, and I actually use his technique for filling seams using dental powder. I really like that. I think that is one of the best ways to fill seams. Okay, there you go. That's how long it took me to clean out my airbrush, and that's it. That's all I need. You don't need to disassemble your airbrush every time you paint. You don't. But you should, maybe, depending on how often you paint, maybe once a month. I paint a lot more because I'm doing stuff for my channel and for other things. So I clean out my airbrush like once a week. Something no one seems to put. Oh, that is a good question, Pippin. This is something that became a problem for me. Sorry, let me go back to Chris's question. I was going to get ready to answer that, and now I'll answer yours. Do you use a large size for primers? I saw one of the panties use Lysol and Tamiya acrylics to clean with. Never thought I would use a water-based acrylics. Yeah, first of all, the Lysol actually works on Tamiya acrylics as well. I learned that. And as I said, I use a 0.5, so I think I cover that. Pippin, how do you throw away all the used chemicals? This I take to my local I guess you guys call it tipping service, and because this is hazardous, you can't just throw this away, and you have to take it, and they will excuse me, I take it to them. Now keep in mind, this takes a long time to fill up. I mean, it takes me a couple of months to fill this up, so it's not every day. But I take it to my county in waste removal location, and when I take it there, they will clean it out because there's a lot of sediment in here, and it is toxic. You don't want to be touching this stuff, the sediment and all that. They will remove it for me. Before that, I didn't know that was a procedure here, because in the U.S. we have, some states have different rules. In Virginia, that's what they tell us to do. This, on the other hand, they don't do anything with. They have told me the paper towels, throw them away. We can't do anything with that, so I just throw them away normally. But every area seems to have its own particular regulations, so I would look into your particular location and find out what the rules are. Okay, let us move on. Ooh. All right, so that's how easy. Oops. That's how easy it is to clean your airbrush. Literally, that's all I do. That is all I do, and I'm okay. Before we move on to some of the other airbrushing stuff I was going to cover, any further questions? Every time I use my brush once in a while, I clean my... Mark, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as if you're taking apart your airbrush, use needle juice. I have Badgers. I bought this, my God, I probably bought this almost 15 years ago. But every time you take apart your airbrush, the threads are getting a little bit warped and destroyed. You always want to make sure your threads are good, and so when you take it apart, always use your Badger or any type of needle juice to make sure the threads remain good. But you can. I don't think it's necessary. The only time I used to take apart my airbrush every day is when I did this professionally. But we were airbrushing for like 6 hours a day, so that was a necessity. I don't do it now with modeling. There's no reason for me to. You're not doing enough modeling to justify taking it apart every day. You can just be aware to use needle lubricant. Do you need dedicated needle lubricant? Yes. I use the Badger one. I know Iwata makes one. I don't know if Harder Steinbeck makes one. I've never seen it. But either or, it doesn't matter which one you use, but you should always use needle lubricant. Oh, by the way, not just on the needle. Use this to lubricate all of your threads. So I don't just use it on the needle. I use it on the chalk, the needle chalk here, on the needle body itself, everything. Use it on everything to help keep the threads nice and not breaking apart or getting destroyed. You want to use it on everything, not just the needle. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to the next thing I wanted to cover, which is, oh man, I got some crap on there. Never mind. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's a test piece, guys. So, but I dropped some of my cleaner on top of it. You can see the little discoloration it's done. Okay, so I'm going to talk about airbrushing parts, and I'm going to talk about airbrushing. I'm going to use two examples here of the two main kind of airbrushing camos and talk about how to do them well. But I need to explain a couple of things. And the first airbrushing camo is going to be the hard edge. So hard edge camo is probably the easiest in my opinion to do. It's simple. You just tape up something and you go ahead and airbrush over it. So in this case, this piece, by the way, I did maybe 30-40 minutes before you guys joined. So it's good to go. And I'm just going to tape over it. So this whole thing about, oh, you have to wait 24 hours to tape over acrylics or whatever, I don't know who the hell said that. Nope. What I don't want to do is rip it off like that. Okay? But you can tape over acrylics. Just be a little gentle. You can even detach the tape if you want a little bit. This is Tamiya tape, so I'm not too worried about it. Tamiya tape isn't the most tackiest tape. But there's a process that I would recommend to do hard edge camo, and this comes back from the training we got when we were doing painting. Our job, I'm going to use demonstration here. The thing about painting that we were trained to do is we were repairing pictures, and the thing about pictures is you want to make everything blend, or the person won't buy the picture. So it's about, convincing them that everything looks good, or as my teacher used to say, we're lying to their eye. And the way you lie to their eye is by making sure the paint you're airbrushing is atomized so nicely that your eye can't detect anything wrong with it. And the way she explained it is your eye looks for something wrong or errors. And I guess this is a survival mechanism. I don't know. Guys, I'm just telling you what I was, how I was trained. That's all. And so the smoother your airflow, the less your eye can tell, and the better the result. This is why we used only 0.2, 0.3 millimeter airbrushes in fixing any prints, because you get your best paint atomization, you get fine lines, and your eye can't tell. And that was the whole goal, is you do it a nice slower method, and you get a better result and a nicer finish, and it looks natural, and the person is happy and they'll buy the print. And now some of these prints, mind you, I didn't work on the expensive ones, I didn't have that kind of training, but some of these prints are thousands of dollars. They're not cheap. So to fix them, if somebody sees a crappy job of the print being fixed, they're not going to buy it. So here's how I'll demonstrate this. So my PSI is I'm dropping it down to about 18 right now. And for this demonstration, I'm going to use the NATO brown color here. Okay. And just going to use the GSI. It doesn't matter what airbrush you use. It's the idea. Pay attention to the idea. This one thing. Oops, drop the bottle. This is one thing I hate about these bottles, is the tip dries and you have to constantly be aware of that. Don't squeeze it immediately. Make sure that the paint is coming out nice on its own, or it's going to squirt into your cup and potentially glue things. So I have not thinned the paint. I am at 18 psi, and I'm going to start airbrushing. Okay. Hopefully you can see what I'm trying to describe here. Do you see the line, and that it looks fairly nice, but there's a little bit of grittiness to it? Doug, what needle size? The GSI is a 0.3. So this is the thing. Do you see? It looks fairly nice, but you can see some of the grittiness, the overspray, as it's called. That's the whole thing. Your eye's gonna be able to detect that. So the better atomize your paint, the less your eye is able to detect that, the better the results. So this is what we used to do. What we used to do is we would thin our paint. I'm thinning it here. You can't see it because I have to hold it behind here. Sorry. And then I'm going to show you how I can get better results here. Give me just a second. This is my first time doing a live like this, and learning a lot here. And one of the things I'm learning is how I have my setup. I need to change the location of things because it's a little bit inconvenient when there's a laptop and a camera and a bunch of wires in between you and what you need to do. So, thin my paint. Come back in, making sure my paint is thin. Looking for those chocolatey bubbles here. I'm going to come in and I'm going to blow out first because that paint is not going to come in thin. Now I'm coming in. And hopefully you can see here, the line is so much more smoother. You can't pick up the overspray with your eyes. And I have 20/20 vision here with glasses, but I have 20/20 vision here. But you can't see any overspray. It looks smoother. It looks solid and really nice. And this is kind of the look you want to go for when you're trying to airbrush. If you can get your lines nice and tight like this with no overspray, you've kind of solved 90% of the airbrush magic, as it will. You've basically solved and figured out. This is how airbrush artists make a really good picture or whatever it may be, is they've gotten the line nice and smooth so your eye can't see those oversprays. And then they go in and do the work, and then you believe it because it looks more natural. Versus this, it's not a bad line necessarily. I can still paint a tank or something, but if it was by itself, you can see the overspray. And this makes more of a difference when you're trying to do camo, especially freehand camo. When your overspray, when your paint atomization is really nice, you're going to get less overspray and you're going to get a nice finish to your model. You're not going to get overspray. It's going to look better, everything. So for example, look at this. If you can see the camo on my tank here, I did this all freehand, by the way, all freehand with a 0.2 millimeter nozzle. There's no overspray. It almost looks like I used a template of some kind. And that's the whole thing. It's really about just fooling the eye. So this all done freehand. You can see the paint because I've thinned it and I have the right PSI and trigger control. There's no overspray. Well, it's a little bit hard to see with the dustiness, but hopefully you can see what I'm talking about here. But you can't see any graininess to the paint, and it looks like a template was used when it's by hand. And I do this with I've demonstrated this on other models. For example, my Sky Raider, which I don't have with me. Hold on, guys. I have the BF109, and I can show you on the BF109. That's a much bigger scale model. Give me just a second here. I didn't think about it before. Okay, back now. Okay, so in this BF109, hopefully you can see the paint right here between the desert color and the light blue. And that was done freehand. And there's no overspray, so it looks natural. That's kind of what I'm getting at. When you have nice atomized paint, it looks more natural as a result of it. And I did this completely by freehand, all of this. The only thing that I didn't do by freehand, obviously, is the yellow, because, yeah, you know, you have to mask off the yellow. But once you get it nice and atomized, and you airbrush things, it looks more natural. Your eye isn't going to pick up that issue of graininess, and when it sees the graininess, things like that, that kind of takes you out of it. So we would say, oh, the person knows it's fake. So you always want to try to avoid that, and when you're doing camo or when you're doing airbrushing. And so that's the first thing I wanted to point out about airbrushing. Okay, so now that I've talked about, you know, atomizing your paint properly, and hopefully everybody understood that. Any questions? This is the first time I'm doing this, so if I'm not explaining it properly, please let me know. This is a learning experience for me too, guys. No questions? Okay. Okay, I'll turn this around, and I'm gonna do some. We are gonna do some drawing now. Okay. I'm gonna explain how to airbrush hard edge camo properly. Let's pretend this is the surface of the model, and we'll put S for surface. This is our first layer of paint on top, and here's our tape. Okay, so another one here. So what happens is, most people, when they airbrush a hard edge camo, what they do is they spray at a 45-degree angle right here. So 45. And they're spraying this way to the tape. Does that make sense so far, guys? And what happens when you do that is you create a buildup right here, but smooth right here. So it's going to look smooth, but it creates a buildup. And they keep blowing they keep blowing this way to the tape. So it builds a ridge. And what you'll see slightly is when you look at the model at angles, when you remove the tape, there's going to be a little ridge form because the paint was hitting that barrier of the tape and created a ridge right there. And it kind of takes you out of the model. And when we fixed print, I can honestly tell you, people are very picky when they're buying expensive prints. They saw that, they would immediately not buy the print. So the best way to airbrush is not at this angle, at this 45-degree angle against the tape. It's to airbrush at the 90-degree angle. So when I'm airbrushing a hard edge camo, I want to do 90 degrees. This way the paint will flow here and lay down smoother versus creating this ridge if I shoot at the tape. Let's pretend here's the tape right here. What happens when you shoot away from the tape? You're going to create like this little softer edge right here. It's not going to be a hard edge. So you want to shoot at the 90 degrees. Okay? Does that make sense? I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm assuming yes. So I will continue. Okay. So I'm going to use my airbrush. I already got it paint thin. By the way, it's been sitting and it's almost 85 degrees now. So I'm gonna one more time just kind of make my paint come back alive. Because, by the way, Virginia, oh my God, humidity is insane. I'm sweating right now just sitting here doing this. This is not hard work, and I'm sweating because of the humidity right now. So it was at 73, and now it's saying it's at like 76%. So paint dries out really, really fast in the cup here. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to blow out the paint, make sure everything is going nicely, and then I'm going to come in. One of the other things I want to say about acrylic paints, as you can see, I can change the intensity of the paint. So if you notice over here closer, it's a little bit darker because I haven't covered the remaining green. So it's got like more of a darkish brown, but it's got a lighter brown because I haven't covered the gray primer. This is a neat little trick you can use. And hopefully when we do this again, I'm working on a Corsair and I can show you how this works really nicely to create bleach effect on your paint. So 90 degrees, coming back in. Now I'm going to come in harder just to kind of blend everything. By the way, notice I'm about maybe 4 centimeters right now from my model, maybe 3. For some reason, I have seen recommendations from magazines, modeling magazines, and some modelers to be about 6. So maybe this is 6 inches away. Okay. If I do this at 6 inches, I'm doing a broad coverage, and I don't know if you can see it, but the paint is kind of dry. So it's by the time it hits, so it's got like a grittier look. Hopefully, can you guys see that? So you don't want to be 6 inches away from your subject. You're just going to get a grainy look. Unless you're looking for a soft look or such, and you really have thin paint. If you're this far away, the paint is drying before hitting the surface and smoothing out. So you're going to get this grainy look right here. This is why when I airbrush, I'm about 3 to 4 centimeters, max 5. I want the paint to go slightly on wet. And with my thinner mixture, the paint is going to self-level out. So hopefully you can see it's going to start off glossy. I'm going to try to dry it a little bit in front of you guys here. But as you can see right there, it's already self-leveled out. Close to the tape, not over here. This is still wet. So let's go a little bit more, demonstrate a little bit more here. So you can see where I just airbrushed the wet spot, but the rest of the paint here has already started to dry out and level out. Okay, so keep in mind, did this piece maybe 30-40 minutes before I joined the video. I'm not ripping the tape off, guys. I'm going nice and gentle, and I'm pulling at this angle right here against the tape and pushing it back. Cat hair. Yeah, by the way, you'll notice I have like cat hair all over the place. I have cats, and man, you cannot, no matter what I do, cat hair is everywhere. So as you can see, hard edge camo, and more importantly, no ridge to the camo. See that? I don't know how. George, do you usually unmask straight away? Yeah. I think people are afraid that it's going to ruin the acrylic paint. Just go nice and slowly. I don't have patience, George. That's my problem. And so I will unmask and mask. And to give you an idea, I did a video of this. You can see my channel on my channel. But this entire model, I masked and painted over in 40 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. And that includes the weathering. I'm sorry, that includes the weathering, the decals, all of that stuff. But it also includes the primer, the main colors, the white, the bands, the yellow, everything. I don't have patience. I like to do everything, as soon as I start it. I don't like to wait. So I'm not going to wait like a couple of days. No, it's go nice and gently. There's no issue. As I said, the thinner mixture or future or whatever you want to add in, whatever additive you choose to add to the acrylic paint, once acrylic paint starts to dry, it's a rubber. It becomes pretty solid. You don't need to be scared of acrylic paint. I think there's a lot of misnomers about acrylic paint is so weak, it's ridiculous. You know what? Here's the piece we primed about maybe 20 minutes ago. This is one of the annoying things, is finding that little edge of tape. There you go. No issue. These pieces I painted before you guys joined. It's pretty resilient. I really can't stress enough. Acrylic paint isn't as weak as people think. It's pretty resilient once you understand it. So once I mean, if you're banging your kits harder than what I just did here, dude, you guys have some anger issues with your models. Maybe you should fix. That's all I'm saying. But look, I banged this pretty hard. There's no paint was destroyed. Nothing came apart. It's gonna be fine. It's a lot more resilient than you think. I just go nice and slow, and there's no issue. That's it. Simple as that. Okay. Any questions about hard edge? None of this is very complicated, so it's a very short demonstration, guys. Okay, it's saying people are typing stuff, so I'm going to give everybody a minute here before I move on. Need to try it again, but tested new MIG Atom, and it was taking long to cure. I have not tried the new MIG Atom paints. I can't say. Try it with my thinner mixture, as I explained when I started. All the thinner mixture is like an additive that the artist community uses, except I just fine-tuned my mixture for airbrushing purposes. They use it for hand painting and painting large-scale murals and stuff like that. But it basically makes the paint a little bit more stronger. But again, I haven't tried Atom paints yet. I'm curious, but so I don't know if you saw, George, how much paint I have, but I can't really justify buying more paint. Like, I can't. I mean, seriously. Like, I'm going to show you guys my paint stuff just to give you an idea. So here's one rack, and I think this holds 70 something paints. Here's all my ammo, and then here's all my remaining Vallejo. I want to buy new paints, but I just can't justify buying paints at this point. I just have way too much paints to be like, I need more paints. So that's just my thing. But I like painting, so that's why I have a lot of paints. Any other questions? Okay, cool. Let's move on to the fused edge camo. And I need another sheet of white paper for markers, so give me just 1 second here. Robert, I have a lot of paint, but all of mine are Humbrol and Model Master. Awesome. Yeah, I started with Model Master. I actually think their acrylics were pretty awesome. I did have their acrylics for a while. My problem with them is the company that took them over decided, hey, we no longer care about modelers, and we're going to get rid of all the military stuff. So I don't like that. So it's, I wish they would bring them back. I really do. I think their color selection was awesome for modelers, particularly, but they got rid of it. Humbrol, I have tried a couple of Humbrol paints, and I like them. I think they're great. They are a pain in the ass to get a hold of in the United States. Mark, what do you think of the Warhammer paints? The Warhammer paints are nothing more than rebadged acrylic stuff, so they're all the same. So Mark, if you build Warhammer, I don't, but I think Warhammer is awesome, and I want to do some Warhammer stuff. You can use the thinner formula that I mentioned, and on my channel, and you will get good results. Now the thing about this is one of the things I actually wanted to talk about. I'm going to deviate, guys. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to deviate a little bit here, and I'm going to explain modeling theory, or at least what I've seen, and I'm kind of curious to see what you guys' thoughts are. So let's pretend that modeling is on a spectrum here. On this side is the smoothest paint finish, and on this side is rough paint finish. I think the smoothest paint finish is natural metal. Okay? And I think the rougher paint finish is figures. Let's put it that way. And why is this important to know? Because this dictates how you airbrush stuff. The thing about the figure community is because if you look at, for example, one of my favorite guys is Angel Gilderis. He is an amazing modeler. Okay, he is fantastic. But notice how he airbrushes versus guys who build model airplanes or cars or tanks. So the figure guys, when they're airbrushing, they're not going constant stream of paint, because the things that they're airbrushing are so small. If you did that, you would cover everything. What they do is they shoot paint. If you notice, he's shooting paint. He is not airbrushing consistently. He's shooting paint. And when you shoot paint, you're not getting the smoothest finish, but it doesn't matter, because if the figure is so small that it just kind of blends in. And then they do like 20 different things on top of it. They put filters, inks, glazes and everything like that. The paint work ends up looking great, but this dictates, this continuum dictates how you airbrush certain things. So the figure guys, they just shoot paint, not a big deal. In fact, I don't even think you necessarily need my formula for what they do. You can just use thinner, to be honest with you, because you're not going for consistent spraying. My thinner mixture is designed for consistent long-term airbrushing, because I like to airbrush for like 40-50 minutes straight. I like to do an entire model my at a time, and my model like this is some of the figures that they build are like that big. Versus look at this thing compared to some of the figures they build. So it's a completely different concept of how they do things versus how I do, or how airplane modelers or tank modelers do things. So it's a different way. So you don't need a smooth paint for that, as you do, for example, with airplanes. Then you have what I would say is the next in line is the armor guys. So I'll put A for armor. And also along this, I would say the train guys. You can get away building tank models without the smoothest finish, because tank models, that kind of just goes into their look a little bit. Most tank modelers, they add in so much stuff that it doesn't matter if the paint isn't smooth. And in fact, with acrylics, because you don't get a smooth surface, you can make a tank look really grimy. It's a really nice look. So they don't need smooth finishes at all. So it's a different way of mentality. You may not necessarily need to have I cannot say the words here. You may not have the best, thinned out paint and get the best atomization, because it doesn't really matter. You can kind of blast it on. It really makes no impact. Then in the middle is airplane guys. And when I'm saying airplane, I mean just airplane. I don't mean natural metal finish. I mean camo airplanes, things like that. We need a smoother finish. Airplanes, because of the forces of aerodynamics, the paint is usually going to be smoother. The look is usually going to be smoother as well. So that's important to note, because now you start changing how you're airbrushing. Here you can get away with just a rougher texture because you're going to be covering it up, all this stuff. Here you're starting to get to a smoother finish. And then here are the car guys. That's when you need a much smoother finish than the airplane guys, because they're usually going for glossier finishes. So you have to go with a much nicer, smoother paint finish. You can't have a rougher fixture. You need smoothness. With all gloss, you need to have the best smooth surface possible. So the continuum of this rougher to smoother that I'd like to say, this dictates the level of effort you're going to put into your airbrushing to get the best available airbrush effect. When we come back to natural metal finish, you have to work your ass off on a natural metal finish. You have to make sure the surface is smooth. You have to make sure you're airbrushing nicely, because natural metal finish is fairly unforgiving. So, going back to the concept of how you airbrush Warhammer versus all this stuff, you can get away. Depends. Here, I think you can get away with a smooth, not as great. You don't need to be super perfect in how your paint is atomized. Here, you start having to really focus on your paint atomization. Here, it makes more, and then here, absolutely. That's anyway my theory of airbrushing models. Okay, let's see questions. I have airbrush Citadel Black with your mix, and it has a durable satin finish. Oh, awesome. I have not tried the Citadel Black. I tried one of the reds. I got a really nice finish. Do you use your formula both on Vallejo primers and Tamiya acrylic paint? I use my formula on Vallejo primers. I do not use it on Tamiya acrylic paint. Tamiya acrylic paint is not a quote-unquote real acrylic paint. Acrylic is a generic term, and there's a lot of paints that are acrylic, and they have different binders to them. Tamiya is a hybrid acrylic, and if you try to use my formula with the hybrid acrylic, it will not work as well. If you prefer to use Tamiya acrylic, which I do, by the way, I love Tamiya. I grew up on Tamiya for the most part for modeling. I would recommend, let me grab a bottle. This is Mr. Color Thinner, and this stuff has a retarder in it, and it thins Tamiya paint the best, and you will get the best airbrush flow from Tamiya paint with this. So that's my recommendation. I also recommend this for Mr. Hobby Color Paint, obviously. But this is the best stuff for Tamiya thinner, Tamiya acrylic paint. Remember, it's not a water-based acrylic. My formula, Ollie, is that how you say your name? Ollie? Ollie, my formula is really for water-based acrylics only. Yeah, it is toxic. It is a lacquer. It's a mild lacquer, but it's a lacquer, George. So you have to be careful with Mr. Color Thinner. Yeah, guys. For those who joined late, just a couple of words on safety, just because this stuff is toxic. I don't want to say it's toxic, but it's not exactly good for your health. When I airbrush, you can't see it, but I have a fan on. I have an air purifier on. I have a spray booth here that's vented to the outside. So I have all three things going normally when I'm airbrushing. You don't want to risk your health on this stuff. But if you're using lacquer paints or stuff with the lacquer in it, I really recommend you use a paint mask, a dedicated paint mask, because that stuff is very strong, and it lingers in the air. Acrylics linger in the air as well, and you shouldn't be breathing them in. That's why I always have my spray booth going, and my fan going, and you can get away with not wearing a mask with acrylics. But if I didn't have that stuff going, today I have windows open because I'm doing this presentation, but I will have a mask on. You will start feeling the effects of acrylics on you. They're not completely harmless. Anything that's vaporized into the air and you're sucking into your lungs is going to hurt you. Lacquers are going to hurt you 10 times more, but even acrylics, just airbrushing them and not having ventilation is going to hurt you. So please be mindful of that, and take proper precaution. Okay, any other questions before we move on to the next thing I wanted to showcase, which was diffused edge camo? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so we'll move on. Alright, so this is the test piece for diffused edge camos. Now, diffused edge camo is called soft edge camo in the US. I don't really like that word. Oh, Chris, you have a question. Is Mr. also a hybrid acrylic? It's similar. Yes, it is. I think Mr. Color Aquarius, Chris, is one of the best paints out there. It's just a pain in the ass to get a hold of, and it's pretty expensive in my opinion. If it was more readily available, that would be my go-to paint. That's how much I think they're amazing. It's amazing paint. And they have way more selection than Tamiya, so you can do a lot with it. Okay, let's go on to the second part, which is diffuse head. And I don't like the word soft edge. We use soft edge in the U.S., or at least that's what I grew up calling it, because soft edge is kind of a, I don't know, it's misleading because it's not really soft edge. It's it's so close that it could be hard edge, but it's not. And so what I mean by that is, let's talk about what really soft edge is. So, by the way, every time your paint is sitting, good practice to have is before you go back to your piece, always blow out the paint. Just make sure there's nothing that has become dried or anything, and then paint the model. Never go directly onto your model. Even when you stop for a second, always shoot off the model, then back onto the model. This is just good practice because you don't know what it may have dried or not, and if you come back in here and start airbrushing and something blurts out, it's going to ruin your paint job. So always shoot off and then join back on. So I'm going to demonstrate soft edge here, what I would consider soft edge. Here's soft edge. This to me is soft edge. Soft edge is where the gradient is so fine, it's hard to tell almost where the paints, join or not. You can't really have a defining line. And I think tanks, I would say tanks mostly you see this. In a lot of tanks you see this. You don't really see this in airplanes. Airplanes have a more diffuse, where it's more defined, and that's why I prefer using diffused edge versus soft edge. This to me is soft edge. You don't really see this camo. You don't really see this on airplanes as much. That's just my opinion. I'm an airplane guy. That's why I don't like the word. Okay, so I was gonna draw some stuff to explain. So let me do that. Okay. Remember, I am not an artist, so forgive me for my drawing abilities here. You're looking at top down. So here's my color, right? I should have done it this way. You have two camos, and they come and they're so you have two camos together, and the line is not defined well enough. Maybe this is not a good painting. Now that I'm thinking about it. When you have two camos and they come together, and the separation is really, it's almost hard edge, but it's kind of blends in a soft, very soft border right where they touch. That's kind of what I would say is or diffused edge is more realistic term in that concept. And the way to attain that is paint atomization. So going back to the tank here, you can see, hopefully, you can see it's a hard edge, but it's not exactly a hard edge, right? It's not this. It's not 100% defined, but it's 95% defined. It's almost a hard edge. And that's what to achieve that, you want good paint atomization, good hand skill coordination, but a couple of concepts you need to remember. One, light color first. Two, dark color. So you always have a light color and a dark color in camo, and you want to add in your light color first, and then you want to create the camo separation using the dark color. So you always go light to dark in any camo paint scheme, and you want to make sure your paint is atomized. And I think everybody kind of knows this, but I'm going to demonstrate something in particular of this that I think is really important, which is what happens when the separation isn't as nice as you want it to be. So we're going to add in the NATO brown again, just because I think visually it's easy to see. And I'm going to mix it with my paint stirrer. Remember, worth the investment, in my opinion. And so our paper towel, by the way. Okay. 60% thinner, 40% paint here. 18 psi, getting those really nice bubbles. I'm gonna check. Okay. Hopefully you can see the fine line that I'm getting. The paint atomization, this is what I'm looking for. It's perfect. My paint is mixed properly. My PSI is fantastic. When you look at this paint, this line, you cannot with your eyes see the, you can't see any of the overspray. that's the whole point. That's how the whole tricking of your eye thing that I talked about earlier. So let's go in here. Oops, I screwed up there. I don't think this airbrush is clean. Yeah. Hold on, I didn't clean this airbrush. I'm going to use a different one. That's the good thing about having a bunch of airbrushes at your disposal. So I'm just going to dump the paint in here. Another thing to note is, so if you came early to the thing, I had like a bunch of airbrushes, like maybe 30 airbrushes displayed. And everything, one of the things about the airbrush is they're pretty much all the same, except they all have little idiosyncrasies of their own. So this is something you should know. The Posh, for example, blows out a lot of air. You know, for this, you might want to even drop the air pressure down a little bit. But look, by taking off, I can get these amazing thin lines with the Posh. That one wasn't clean, but the paint was atomized nicely. See, this is where I screwed up right here, and I'm trying to fix it. So, okay, so with the H&S, I screwed up because there's something wrong with the trigger, so it looks a little bit wet right here. But if I come back in over and over again, I can blend it in. So always remember, you know, just because you make a mistake doesn't mean it's the end of the world. So I will come in, try to blend it in, but we'll deal with that later. Really what I wanted to focus on is the paint, creating a soft edge camo. Yep. So hopefully you can see that. Oops. It's not dry yet, so but this is what I did for the Abrams. And I'm not finished with the Abrams, but as you can see, I just went in with my airbrush, airbrushed all over the camo, nice and easy, nice and gently, nothing too extravagant. And because the paint was thin properly, got the nice border separations. But let's say you go in and you screw up. There's a lot of overspray, right? So how do you deal with overspray in this and fix your camo? Or is the camo lost? So what I'm going to do here is, whoops, where's my airbrush? So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do here, it's a lot of overspray as you can see. Is there a piece I have I can show this on? Oh, dang it, I don't. Okay, so I'm gonna create this grainy look here. So let's, in this case, this is the darker color. When you have two colors, the lighter color and the darker color, you airbrush the lighter color first, then you come in with the darker color. The darker color, because it's darker, if there's overspray, it's going to be noticeable on the lighter color. To fix the overspray, you come back in with thinned lighter color and go gently over the overspray. Because it's going to blend in and it's not going to show as much on the darker color. It's a little trick of paint. And this is how our professional artists fix mistakes on their canvas when they have some issue like this. The lighter color, because it's not going to show up as much on the darker, is the one that they use to fix the issue. So I can't find the green paint that I used for this, but if I was to come in with this paint, can you guys see the overspray here? I would come in with the green, thinned, and just trace where I wanted to fix the overspray. Does that make sense? Any questions there? Okay, not seeing any questions. All right, let's go on to what if you're not comfortable. What if you're not comfortable doing camo freehand and you want that diffused edge look? You can use something like white tack to create that. And what you're doing is you're basically just going to come in here. And you're not going to completely shoof it down, but what happens is, let's say this is the surface. Here's our white tack. What's going to happen is when you airbrush over the white tack at a 90-degree angle, remember, it's going to hit here, 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 and this little area right here is going to create that soft transition where it's going to be a diffused edge paint. And this is how you can create a diffused edge if you're not fully comfortable doing it by hand. So I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to make sure my paint is still good to go. Okay, so okay. I'm going to put my airbrush back here. Same effect. Same effect. So you got that diffused edge looking camo just with some blue tack. But it's the same principles almost. Thin paint, proper air pressure, come in 90 degrees, and there you go. Okay guys, that is all I had. Those were the main things people were asking about, so I'll open up the floor to any questions. And if people want, I was going to do one other demo on the BF-109 But that's really all I had as far as instructional stuff. So yeah, questions, concerns, comments, complaints. Hey, I'm here for all of it. Thanks, George. Appreciate it. Oh, Chris, I didn't see your question. Do I have any hobby shops near me? No, all of the hobby shops in my area have shut down. There used to be an amazing hobby shop near me called Piper Hobby, and the gentleman that owned that had a heart attack, and he has unfortunately passed, and so his wife. So yeah, no more for me. I buy all my stuff online now. So that is gone. Okay, so let's see. Many thanks for your time. Appreciate it, John. George, do I appreciate? Yes, I appreciate once in a while. So I'm gonna say something controversial, and it's fine. This is just my opinion. I think modeling is very opinion based and situational and preference based. So for me personally, I like pre-shading. I think pre-shading is the most realistic weathering method airplanes go through. I say this as somebody who works in a hangar with airplanes. That's just my opinion. I know some people hate pre-shading. They genuinely hate pre-shading. They think it's cookie, and and some great modelers who hate pre-shading. So, for example, Doug's models, he hates it. Okay, and yeah. Now, in my opinion, pre-shading is the most realistic, but it's not the most visually stunning. In my opinion, black basing is more visually appealing. So, visually appealing wise, black basing is kind of my thing. I like doing that just to make the model pop a little bit more. SJ, thank you, and glad you learned, and it was informative to you. Same here. Chris, same here. Hobby Lobby, I have to mail. Yeah, unfortunately, it's all Hobby Lobby. Pippin, thank you for joining, and I appreciate the kind words. John, what about modulation? Yeah, I like modulation, John. To be honest with you, I made a video on how to do modulation on World War II cockpits. I've been really getting more into the Spanish school of modeling, and those guys make some visually stunning models. Do they look realistic? No, but who cares? It's a model, and that's just my opinion. But I really love what they do. So I am a big fan of theirs, and I've been learning a lot of their techniques. So if you check out my video on the color modulation for World War II cockpits, I loved how the cockpit came out. George, do you use any airbrush templates, like texture templates? Yes, I do. I use, I think I have them somewhere. I don't know where. Oh, here you go. George, I use these. These are little templates for black basing. This is what I used on the BF-109, because it can be really a pain in the ass to sit there to do black basing on a large subject with the white. So I use these if I'm feeling lazy. Christopher, I want to highlight a YouTuber called Hillbilly Modeler. I know Hillbilly Modeler. Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with using craft acrylics. I use craft acrylics for painting details on my cockpit, like red and all that stuff. Until I ran out of the bottles. But the generic colors work fine. Maybe not the military. I mean, they don't have military colors, but you can use the generic colors for stuff. You can use their yellow. I think their yellow is pretty nice for like painting yellow dials, red, blue, stuff like that. I have no problem with that. And I think I saw a car model build of his, and he used it on to paint a car, and it looked great. I think for that kind of stuff, yeah, the craft paints work well. You just have to understand how to use the craft paints. That's the one thing. People just they don't understand. You have to work with the craft paints a little bit, but other than that, they work out really nicely. I like them. And okay, Nigel, appreciate it. Great live lesson. Hey, thanks, man. Thanks, Nigel. Appreciate it. Thank you. George, good templates. Yeah, I like them. I picked them up on sale for like, I think it was $2 at a hobby show. So for $2, they're seriously worth it, in my opinion. Which clears beside AK Gauzy Agent can you recommend? I recommend 2 other ones that I use. This is Alcalad Aqua Gloss. I just put it in these bottles because I like these dropper bottles. They make things convenient. I don't like the Alcalad bottles. The tops become gunky, and then it takes like the strength of Superman to open some of these bottles once in a while. But I think this is really, really good. And one thing I discovered about this that may be useful to some people, if you use Alcalad Aqua Gloss, it's the only gloss that I know of that you can put Vallejo acrylic washes on top of, and you can come back and let them dry and come back and wash them off. I tried Vallejo acrylic washes on all sorts of washes and paints, and I don't know what the hell is in those things, but they're like acid. They ruin everything. This is the only gloss that doesn't ruin, that will prevent them from ruining stuff. So I really like this, and I like Tamiya X22. This is from back in the day, but I still like it. It's really, really nice. So I personally am a big fan. Okay. Pippin, will video be available so we can refer back to it in the future? Yes, it will be in the group page, and I'm going to also upload it into YouTube, and you can watch it there as well. Doug, dinner is ready. Thank you very much. I'm with you, man. I'm getting hungry too. It's 7 p.m. All right, Nigel, do you ever mix needle nozzles across your airbrushes? Only stick with the ones that come in the airbrush box. You cannot take a Badger needle and put it into a you can't take a Badger needle and put it into a harder Steinbeck, Nigel, but you can do a lot of in between stuff with the same company. So here's some of my Badgers. There's just 3, just to give you an idea. All of this is modular. I can change things around. So this, by the way, Badger makes the ammo Air Cobra for Ammo by MIG. I like their trigger, so I got their trigger added into my Badger. I like these roller triggers, so I got this. But I like the tip, these new tips with the refined prongs, and I can take this tip and put it on here if I wanted to. So you can, with this within the same airbrush company, usually it's easier to do, but I can't take the needle from this and add it to my harder Steinbeck. Does that make sense, Nigel? They're just tapered differently. They're different lengths. Everything, even the nozzle tip is different, so they're not gonna function. George, yes, Sotar and Chrome have the same head. Yeah. That's one thing I like about Badger. Yeah, they make a lot of different airbrushes, but honestly, it's pretty much very, mix and match you can do with them. You can do all sorts of stuff with the Badger to make it, first, customize it to your needs. Like, for example, because this thing is smaller and it's designed for fine detail work, I really like this roller trigger. It lets you control so you can do fine detail work. It really helps a lot. So you can do things like that. You can take the tip here and do it there, add it into this airbrush, things like that. I really do like that about Badger. Okay. Oh, glad it was useful to you and answered your question, Nigel. Um, any other question, guys and gals? Yeah, yeah. I'm coming to the UK in October, Nigel. Maybe if you guys, all my UK friends are around, I'll be in London. Happy to meet up. I was there a year ago, uh, and I can't remember the fish and chips place I went to, but they were amazing. They were like the best ranked fish and chips in London. Oh, dang it, I wish I could remember the name now. And then there was another one that's kind of more of a, it's becoming like, it's liked, but it's now becoming a chain. I think it was called Poppies. They were okay. A lot of people at Nats, you didn't go. No, George, unfortunately, I was not able to go. My mom is dealing with breast cancer right now, and this week she just had her double mastectomy. So I needed to be around for that, unfortunately. I would have loved to have gone. I would have loved to have compete. But just, mom is more important than Nats. In the future, maybe I would like to go. I went many years ago with the group from Sacramento when I was living in California. Oops. So, Ollie, glad to hear, man. Glad you learned a lot and it was useful to you. This is my first time doing this, so I know I didn't do the best of jobs, but I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, and then hopefully in the future we can do it again. I would love to show you how I airbrush an entire model all at once. I'm working on the Tamiya Corsair F4U, and if people are interested, I would definitely do a live video of that and show you guys. And on that one, I will show you one of the cool things about acrylics is when you use a white background, you can do a bleaching effect without having to bleach. It's really nice. Sorry about your mom. Isn't the Nats going to be in Virginia next year? Thanks, Chris. I don't know. If it is, I will definitely try to go. If it's in my backyard, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna try to go. Oh, awesome, Nigel. Then yeah, maybe I'll have to do that because I have 3 of them. One I'm doing with a resin cockpit, and then one I'm going to do. Yes, Chris, I am going to do in the Navy the tri camo. I love the tri camo. I don't like the. So first, I should mention, I picked up this book from Vallejo, and I learned a lot of good techniques. And some of the stuff about like how they went about it, and I really thought some of their what they taught was really cool. So like the Hellcat with the 3 camo, I love that. I think it looks really cool. Or this one as well. These 2 I really like. I am not a big fan of the single tone black, this dark blue camo like this one. I'm not a big fan of that. So I'm not going to do it in that. But I really do love the 3-tone camo. But I learned a lot from this book as well about what to do with acrylics, which I really am trying to incorporate into some of my modeling. And I really want to do the finish of the Corsair like this with the bleaching effect that they did. It looks really nice. Yeah, it's a good book, George. You can pick it up for cheap nowadays, so I would recommend grabbing it if you can. I got mine for $15. So yeah. And then going back to what I was saying earlier, I have 3 Corsairs. So one of them I'm going to do out of the box, and then one of them, the guy gave me a resin cockpit. So I'm gonna do that, the resin cockpit, and do one out of box and one with the resin cockpit. It's the old True Details resin cockpit. Oh yeah, yeah. It's definitely available in the UK, Nigel. Um, it's called. It's from their Remove Before Flight division, which is their division that does aircraft stuff, and it's called World War II U.S. Navy colors, painting and weathering with Vallejo products. So I got this because I'm trying to learn more about weathering with acrylics. I know how to airbrush acrylics and I know how to do all of that stuff, but I want to learn more about the weathering side of things. And they came out with a new book that I really, really want. Looks amazing. So I've, as I said, because of my health issues and I can't use lacquers and I really don't like using smelly items. I've switched to acrylics and acrylic weathering stuff, and really trying to do more and learn more about how to do stuff with acrylics to get the same results that I used to get with like lacquers and enamels and all of that stuff. I'll send you the name of the book if you need to, but I'll send you the name of the other book as well, Nigel. That way you have the name of the two books that look really, really good. I don't have the second one, I just have this one. Yeah, hold on a second. I'll show you guys why I can't use enamels anymore. Give me just a second. Say hi to this little brat who does not like enamels and hates the smell of harsh chemicals. And yeah, I'm gonna show you guys. I did this for my video, but hopefully, okay. So I'm gonna show you guys, like just to give you an idea of how harsh these things are. I don't have lacquers. Oops. I don't have lacquers anymore, but I still have my Tamiya, which is yeah. she's a tubby tubster for sure. So to give you guys an idea, this is a hybrid paint. This is an acrylic. Whoops. This is a hybrid. Oops. Come on. This is a hybrid paint right here, right? And it's not a lacquer, but it's a hybrid. I'm not even spraying this, and that's how the smell, how powerful the smell is with this paint. Imagine when I'm airbrushing this, right? So, having said that, this is a water-based acrylic. No reaction. That's how different it is. I cannot stress, guys. Like, okay, Fatso wants off. I cannot stress how like smelly our hobby is, and people don't realize it, except when you have visitors over after airbrushing. They notice it quite well. I mean, we have become nose blind to some of the smells in our hobby, but other people haven't. So it's one of the reasons I recommend acrylic paints. I'm not necessarily saying get Vallejo. I mean, choose the acrylic paint that's best for you. But I recommend acrylics just because the smell alone, people just don't realize it. SJ, I'm interested in the other book too. Yeah, I will send you guys the other book. It's a newer book. It looks amazing. I haven't seen it, but I used that book. Let me get the other ones that I use. Should get. So here is the, oops, let's, whoopsie, whoopsie, whoopsie. Here is, I need a better camera for this. I've been really getting into armor stuff. So this is the second tank I'm building, and I've been trying to use the techniques out of this book for this. But this is a really good one if you're an acrylic user, and you're looking to get into armor. I think this is a really good book to have. And you can pick this up pretty cheap nowadays, and it's taught me a lot. It's really taught me a lot, and it's been really helpful in my adventure. I've been learning a lot from Miguel Jimenez, his channel. The only thing I don't use is the enamel washes. So my biggest problem with so I do have enamel washes. I don't want to say that I don't. It's not like that I hate enamels or anything like that. I have enamel washes. Now here's my thing about enamel washes. They dry out so fast. It's ridiculous. So I bought this about a year ago, and it's almost, I want to say, I don't know if you can see from here, it's almost 80% gone. I've used it like twice. That's one of the things I hate about enamels. So I've been moving more into oils, but his techniques are fantastic. I really do, I really do recommend his techniques for weathering. I just don't like the enamel products for those techniques. So I've been using oils, but this is a good book because they use mostly acrylics in here. Now, my big problem with Vallejo is I don't like their washes. I hate their washes. I have never been able to get their washes to work properly. I don't know about the rest of you guys. If you have, power to you, but I don't like them. In fact, I'm selling all of my Vallejo washes. So I have a bunch of them, and you have to work with them immediately, which I don't like. I want them to dry, and I want to see the look, but you have to work with them immediately. And then they stain things, so they don't come off. I just don't understand how they work. I've used their gloss and used cutting it water and thinner to wipe off the thing, but it still cuts through the gloss. It cuts through everything. I just don't get it. So you tried to do tanks, haven't had the patience for the tracks. Yes, that's one thing annoying. I fully admit. Maybe armored vehicles may be the thing. I did a Jeep. I think I have the Jeep. So I wanted the price for the Jeep. Let me get the Jeep. Okay, so Vallejo brushes are for miniature painters. They are. I agree with that. So here's my. Oh, so much dust on this damn thing. Here is my Jeep. The good thing about this, no tracks. Second place at our local club for this, so I'm proud with it. This was my first Jeep model. Man, it is dusty, and it's got a lot of cat hairs, obviously. But I liked it a lot. So I've been trying to get more into armor. But yeah, if you don't like tracks, a Jeep is the next best option. Looks nice. Tamiya? Yes. Although, I don't know who was working on it, but it was not their A team because they didn't have any brake pedals in this model. Unfortunately, but not a big deal, but expected more from Tamiya. But overall it was pretty good. I liked it. It was fun, it was easy. So this is Tamiya as well. Mark, would you do a live weathering and rust burnt out vehicles, that kind of stuff? Mark, oh my god, I want to do that. I really want to do that. Hold on, Mark, I got something for you. Okay, so this is my first. I'm gonna start moving some of this stuff out of the way here. This is my first. Sorry, sorry, guys. Gotta move stuff. Everything is cluttered up on my desk here. This is my first ever tank model. This one also won second place. This was for the Jeep. This is a different one. But if you notice, the gun is broken. The fuel tank is broken. There's a couple other small broken stuff. And that's because that little fat ass you guys saw that I was holding, she pushed it off the table. So I've been thinking about adding this as like a tank that was taken out and from the Gulf War, because this is an Iraqi tank. This is from the Al Hamza Brigade, and I originally did it in the Iran-Iraq War library and how it looked back then. But I'm thinking, okay, a lot of T-55s were taken out in the Gulf War. And I'm thinking about doing this as a burnout model. And so if you want, I think that might be it. As all cats do. Yeah, seriously. And funny thing is, I have 2 cats. And the other one is even chubbier, little fella. And when he sees her pushing my model stuff, he wants to then push my model stuff. So, I got 2 culprits. But, yeah. So I think I want to turn this into a burnt out wreck, and I have the paint set for the burnt out wreckage colors, and so I was thinking about, like, it was here it was all on fire here, so this part is fine. Here it's been like maybe it was hit to the side here and make this all burned out, and then kind of melt some of the tires. So it looks like the heat melted out some of this area. This would be, because I've seen pictures where they've been hit, and where the fire clearly is, the tires have been melted, but where they haven't, the tires are intact. And I think the tires are aluminum, maybe, I don't know. So something like that with this one is what I'm thinking. So if you would like to see that, yeah, I'm thinking about doing that to this tank. Yeah, I have a Dremel. I used to do a lot more. I build out of box nowadays, George. I just don't have time for really fancy builds, so I do out of box, and I really like it. But I used to do a lot of scratch building, because I used to do models for companies. So I did one of these for actually the Department of Defense. So one of my little famous claim to fame, I guess, is that at the time, this was a couple of years ago when the Syrian conflict happened, they were wanting 3D representations of equipment and stuff to kind of, I guess, to use as models and live demo, whatever. I don't know what they were using it for. I wasn't there. But they asked me to build a T-55, so I built a T-55 in Syrian, and I added a bunch of components and did a lot of stuff, because Syrians had modified their tanks a little bit with like those cages and stuff. So I used to do a lot of that kind of stuff. So I have a lot of stuff left over, and I have a lot of plastic card and green card and all that crap, but I don't do that anymore. I just don't have the time. So I have all of those tools, the Dremel and all of that stuff. Yeah, it was a good commission, and I don't know if you know who this person is, but have you heard of Mad Dog Mattis? He was the one that they presented the model to, and he said to whoever built this was a very nice model. So I take that with pride. So got to impress a 4-star. Oh, you don't? Okay, so General Mad Dog Mattis was the chief of staff. What was the chief? No, he was. What was his title? He was he used to be a 4-star Marine general who became the chief of staff, I think, and he's the guy who was running the Pentagon many years ago, and he's the guy that they were showcasing the models, because when they were doing briefings, they wanted 3D replications, I guess, or whatever, and he was the one, the Secretary of Defense. Yes, there we go. So Mad Dog Mattis, like my model. So, you know, I don't know. I think that is the biggest prize of all. Forget second place. I say Mad Dog Mattis, like my model. So, yeah. Any other question, guys? Or yeah, I was impressed. I was so happy to hear that. My cousin actually gave him the model. So my cousin used to be at the Pentagon at the time. Yeah, Nigel, thank you so much. So that you were able to join. Thank you so much for your kind words. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, if you're down, I definitely would love to do the Corsair video sometimes. And learning from this, I'm gonna change the hours to be earlier in the day, so that will help too. I think, guys, that's it. If everybody is good, and if there's no more questions, I'm gonna end it here. Hopefully this was helpful. I know this was a learning experience for all of us, so I would love your feedback on things I can improve for next time. Definitely need a better camera, obviously, but yeah, let me know. I would really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you enjoyed it, I want to do more of these, and where I would love to actually have multiple people join, and maybe you guys demonstrate stuff as well. It's morning here. We'll rewatch beginning. Hey man, thank you so much for staying up so late, George. Appreciate it. You're always a good contributor. You definitely are smaller, and so I love to hear your feedback as well. All right, folks. Thank you for joining. Bye.